What's up YouTube, Capital G here, talking about a little problem that I've seen developing over the past couple of months in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. This is more specifically a problem if you live in North America. I would say the United States of America is really where it's centered, but it actually is a problem with our attendance numbers. And before any of you guys start worrying, no, this is not a Yu-Gi-Oh! Is dying video. As a Yu-Gi-Tuber, I remember the Yu-Gi-Oh! Is dying arc all too well. You guys know what side of the argument I was on that. We're definitely not gonna go with any type of that video, but it's actually the exact opposite. Our attendance numbers have been, dare I say, too good for I guess probably about the last year and a half, definitely on the YCS circuit, but it's now starting to actually affect the regional circuit. I know some of you guys are probably screaming, Cap G back at it again with the clickbait. How is it possible for regionals or YCS events to have too good of attendance? Well, I'm specifically talking about regionals in this video because whenever there's a YCS, obviously Konami is usually like fully staffed and sometimes overstaffed because they don't know if they're going to get, 1,000 people or 3,000 people. But when it comes to regionals, obviously regionals are staffed a little bit differently, and sometimes PTOs get a lot more when it comes to the turnouts, and they're really not prepared, and it definitely shows with the event. So you guys know that I would probably say the last year and a half, the attendance in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been absolutely tremendous. I'm on the video that was posted on the Konami EU site that shows, some of the numbers that we hit in 2017, which are still pretty fucking unbelievable. I mean, you're talking about almost 700,000 players actually went to premier events, which is actually insane. But when you look at 2018 as a whole, I mean, our attendance numbers were fucking through the roof, guys. Whether it was the 200th YCS in 3 different continents where all 3 of those events had record-breaking numbers. You had Japan having its first YCS, obviously that did really well. YCS Milan in Europe, which was the one that Prank Kids won. That's the 3rd largest European event in history. And then earlier last year in 2018 at YCS Bochum, which World Chalice won, we saw that being, I believe, the 2nd largest event in European history. So over the last year or so, our event numbers on the YCS circuit have been astronomically high, but it's actually starting to affect the regional levels as well. And I want to show you guys some of the posts that have been posted online on Reddit and on Facebook, like Zodiac Duelist. So this is a couple of things, and the reason that I'm making this video is because when it's one instance, it's like, all right, obviously that's an isolated thing. It's really not that big of a deal. But when you have 2 examples in the span of a month, then it becomes a little eye-opening, right? So there was a regional in Providence, Rhode Island. Now, I know that Providence has had regionals in the past, and I did a little bit of research. Apparently, this is just one of those locations where they've had regionals for years and years, and I think that they held the event in a room that was, maximum capacity of about 210 players. Well, at their last regional in mid-December, apparently about 400 people ended up showing up at the event, and I'm actually going to roll you a clip that shows some of the craziness and the madness that was happening.
Yeah, so we're at the Providence Regional. And so what they did is, if you're at table 113 or higher, you come out here to wait. And then they gave us the option of playing on the floor like these people did, or we can wait for other matches to finish, and then we can go. So, I'm table 134, so I'm going to have to wait for 30 minutes, and we have our own personal clock. So these people want to sit on the floor, but this man's obviously uncomfortable. Are you uncomfortable?
There, but again, this could be an isolated incident. This is why I didn't make a video on it. I was just like, damn, that's crazy, especially in a state that is so tiny like Rhode Island. But obviously you're going to have people from the surrounding states come in, and I imagine that this regional was just absolute chaos because they had people playing on the floor. In fact, let me show you guys just how crazy it was at this event. You were going through the venue, you see people playing on the floor. Now, usually this is something that is not that uncommon of a sight, especially at a YCS event. However, these were actually tournament duels that were going on. This is essentially what happens when regionals end up getting maybe, I would probably say 70 plus more people than they expected. You basically have all hell break loose and people are playing on the floor, and the tournament ends up lasting hours upon upon hours longer than, you know, it was anticipated. But then we have another example as well. This one happened in Rosemont, Illinois. Now, Rosemont is a regional that I'm definitely familiar with, as in the sense that I've heard it. I've never been there. I don't know who the PTO is. I don't know them personally or anything like that. However, I do know in that Midwest area, and this is how I know of the Rosemont regional, a lot of YouTubers go to this event. I think DZ, Team Innovation, Yugioh, Vexicus, Robbie, all of your Midwest YouTubers have all gone to this event before. I believe that, you know, they've all topped it at some point or another. So this was crazy, right? This happened just over the weekend, and it says almost 100 players got turned away from the Rosemont, Illinois regional because they had a 400 player cap. I mean, this is insane. You basically had over 500 or about 500 duelists showing up saying, all right, let's roll, let's get our game on, time to fucking rev it up, etc., etc., and they have to turn away over 100 players, guys. And obviously I'm making this video a little tongue-in-cheek, and if you're going to have an attendance problem in Yu-Gi-Oh, this is probably the attendance problem that you would want to have, where you're actually having to turn people away from your events because they're overcrowded, or you just have way more people than you anticipated. And the first time that something like this happens, maybe you put yourself in the shoes of the people who had to play at these events, it's pretty much not that big of a deal. I remember way back during Zexal, I ended up topping the largest at the time regional in North Carolina history. It was right here in Charlotte, and I think it was like 330 plus people, which was absolutely huge at the time. Ended up getting 8th place with Dino Rabbit. Shout outs to me, by the way. But you know, I've never experienced anything like this, and again, the first time it happens, it's not that big of a deal unless you actually, you know, maybe drove from another state away, from like Michigan or something, and they told you couldn't play. You might be a little PO'd at that point. But if it does end up happening multiple times, then you're in a situation where it's like, dude, I don't even know if I want to actually work with this you know, or go to any of these PTO's events anymore, because they're seeing that the attendance is ramping up and they're not actually, you know, doing anything. They're not getting additional rooms or getting additional staff, etc., etc. And I believe even a regional in Fort Worth, Texas, that I think House of Champs went to over the weekend, that regional was about, it was like right at the hair of 400 people as well. You know what I think that this is kind of a sign of? I kind of think this is a sign of Konami not having enough regionals. If you guys don't remember, during the 5Ds and the GX days, Konami used to have regionals like in states basically every other month. Like sometimes now there might be 2 regionals in your area for, you know, like a year or a kind of like a 9-month span. But back in the GX days, I think it, you know, I'm not sure if it was because they were trying to still build Yu-Gi-Oh from the ground up and get the competitive circuit going, but there used to be regionals all over the fucking place. I mean, I'll never forget the day that North Carolina had 2 regionals on the same day, which is something that is crazy, and it hasn't happened since. But that's how plentiful regionals used to be back in the 5Ds and the GX days. And I don't know, maybe Konami needs to go back to that, and you know, maybe players are coming back into the game or something's happening. But I know that our attendance numbers right now are actually so good that maybe they're even somehow bad. You know what I actually think? I think it could be a couple of things, right? I think that number one, it could be old players coming back into the game. As a Yu-Gi-Tuber, man, I can't tell you guys how often I get comments of people who are watching some of my videos and like, dang Cap, I haven't played the game since X, or I haven't played since the end of GX. How do I play these link cards? How do I get back into the game, etc., etc.? Maybe it could just be a bunch of people who are rejoining the game. And I also think because there aren't as many regionals as there were before, I think that everybody is just looking at it like, damn man, if I don't go to this regional, there may not be another one for, you know, 5-6 months. I better just go ahead and end up going to this event. So I think it's because there aren't as many events as there were in past eras of Yu-Gi-Oh that everybody is just like, all right, let's just go here because we don't know if we're going to get another event after, you know, 5 or 6 months down the line when our next event is. And I think people want to play at regionals multiple times in a format. I think that that's just something that should kind of be expected. Like, you should be able to go to a regional maybe once or twice in a format, and that should just kind of be the norm. Also, the fact that Konami is updating the ban list like they're doing it a lot more frequently now, I think just kind of generates more buzz and hype into the game, and people just there's less of a chance of the format becoming stale and stagnant if they're updating the list basically every 2 months. Like, it's way quicker than the GX days of us getting a ban list like you know, every 6 months or something like that. But whatever you guys think about this, leave it in the comment section below. I know somebody's like, Cap G clickbaiting again, says Yu-Gi-Oh has attendance problems, but the attendance is up. I did show videos of people having to sit on the floor and being turned away because the attendance was much higher than before. I think that would classify as a problem, but whatever you guys think, I'll leave it at that.